So they say the GDP is up. That may be true. But does that really mean that the average American is doing well? Does GDP correlate to the stability and the stability of the economy when it comes to normal people? Let's dissect this a little bit because I don't think it really does. The GDP, the gross domestic product, right, is the total market value of all goods and services. And sorry, I'm just reading this off of the dictionary here, produced in the country. Basically, it's there's not much to really explain there. The GDP grows every year, productivity grows, GDP grows. We look at that as a measurement of how a country is doing. We look at it from a quarterly perspective, and then we also look at it from an annual perspective. And the GDP has been going up. I mean, that is true. We have been producing more stuff. We have been, our services have been, ramping up as well. And it is a economic statistic that a lot of countries, well, pretty much the whole world, but definitely the U.S. relies on to show how well our country's doing from a macroeconomic standpoint. But if we dive a little bit deeper, we can start seeing some cracks in the system and some correlation that just doesn't make any sense, right? Especially when it comes to the um, the stress that people are going through, especially right now. So there's some 3 points here to discuss, and let's kind of dive into those. Forgive me. It's just weather has been affecting me. I've been taking my vitamin D pills. If you're brown like me, take vitamin D pills, man. You might need them. And I think there's some flu going around, so hopefully I don't catch that. But yeah. So GDP measures money movement, doesn't really measure worker stability, right? We see that right now. GDP is up, but unemployment's up. I mean, that alone already shows us that the two do aren't as correlated as people assume and think. Um, Layoffs can contribute to GDP. So when it comes to layoffs, there's a few ways that layoffs can contribute to GDP. Automation, big conversation now with AI. My previous video, I did mention that I don't believe AI is where it needs to be or where it could be yet. It's on its way, but a lot of the discussions of AI layoffs are not based off of AI now. They're based off of a combination of AI in the future. What companies are going to use that money they're going to probably save from laying people off and contribute it towards their R&D towards AI, and also other factors like tariffs and inflation. But um, automation, outsourcing, and another one that people don't talk about as much are stock buybacks, which can also be used to indicate strong GDP. Companies lay people off, they use their proceeds to buy back their own stocks. All companies, a lot of companies do that at one point. GDP goes up, measurement goes up. Another factor is that the GDP is concentrated heavily at the top, so it flows to the corporations, investors, and high yielding earners, right? Also, we can look at it. Another way we can look at it, how with how things are going today, is the K-shaped economy, which basically says that uh, 75 to 90% of our economy right now is being propped up by the high earners, and the top 20%, we'll say. They say 10%, but I'd say maybe the top 20%, especially around right now with the holidays, right? Like top 20, 30%. But the rest of the 80% or 70% are not doing well. They're pulling back spending. They are hopefully saving money, and they're a lot of them are not working, like this guy. So that is another way that we can see that the GDP doesn't really the GDP doesn't really show indicate that the average person is doing well. Um, if you know 20 to 30% of the top earners and top money makers are the ones propping up the economy. GDP is growing while this is happening also, and then the GDP ignores the cost of living and our economic stress. So people, because of inflation, because of rising costs, rising energy costs, and all these different factors, people are being forced to spend more money, right? So spending equals more inflation. It's more spending equals more higher rises in GDP, right? Paying more counts as growth. So really, um, this is a discussion because I wanted to discuss this because a lot of people bring this up. People brought it up in comments here in my videos, and I see this discussion, especially on mainstream media, Fox News, CNN, talking about GDP growth and trying to like sway us away from the conversations that we should be having, such as like, all right, like unemployment's going up. What the hell's going on? The top level, the economy's not good, right? Things are not good. So something's going on, but you guys keep stressing that the GDP is going up, and like this is supposed to like matter to most of us out there, right? From a macroeconomic level, you want to showcase this to the world, like throw it on there with like a banner, like, hey, look, America's still where it's at. Okay, it's marketing at that point, but most of us, man, majority of us know sitting here what's going on. So GDP, I want to say the GDP isn't important. Um, sure, in some regards it is important. Like it's one of many important statistics, but the problem is that there are other ways to measure the economy that we don't use because we don't use them because obviously if we did use those statistics to show how the economy is doing, then it would show bad numbers. So why would the government, this administration or even previous administration, why would they want to show that, oh, during my reign, um, things are not good for the average person? They haven't been for a while. So just want to kind of stress that, man. GDP, uh, not a good indicator of the economy for the average person.